dangerous. I've never done my father got it.
Well, I must say I've been looking forward to seeing you all and meditating with you together again. Cover.
That ought to avoid the microphone.
This sits down there.
No.
Well, you must take us as you find us, rather travel-stained, and a bit disorientated, because although the flight yesterday was only 11 hours, one spends almost as much time on the ground in formalities, and one's sleep is a bit disturbed, and it's now, at this moment, midnight, in the time we've been living in. It's time to go to sleep. So we daren't trust ourselves to meditate for long. We want to compare notes as to how they run their groups in New Zealand and we run ours here, as he's been hearing a good bit from Michael and Gillian Harris, who are back with them now. Well, there's some announcements, first of all.
First, Macaulay for visitors, Friday the 3rd of February. Next meditation meeting, Tuesday the 14th February.
And to that, everybody but the very newest, all meditators except the very newest, yes, are welcome.
And then there'll be a large Monday meeting like this on the 27th of February. The annual general meeting of the Society will be on Thursday the 16th of March at 8:15 and will be followed by a talk at 8:30 by Dame Idris Connell.
And that's all right by you, isn't it?
It should be said that the annual general meeting as such is for members of the Society, but the talk that follows it is for everybody who comes to these meetings. So you will be welcome, everybody, on the 16th of March. And then there's going to be a course for new turners after Easter. If anyone else wants to learn, would they let either Mr. Coran or the office know, or have the names of others who want to learn. And it's been decided to continue the scheme whereby groups send someone each week to the working parties whenever this is possible. It is a great help, and so would groups please arrange this straight away.
Any questions about that side of things? I want to say a few words about invalids. It's part of our work, it's part of our boast that we try to keep the Paramatman in mind, that any of our people with whom we have a special associationship are to be thought of when they're ill, seriously ill. You will have noticed that Mrs. Hamilton Pearson's voice is not to be heard on the front door. She is in a nursing home, being well looked after. Anybody who knows her very well and wants to visit, would they ring the nursing home? They can get the phone number from the office so that she will be consulted, because she is fairly weak, and about 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour is probably as long as she can take, but very glad to see visitors, of course. Mademoiselle Costa's in hospital at the moment. She's all right. She probably may be there another few days. We hear that Mrs. Melidis has turned the corner. Is her husband here?
No, I didn't hear.
She's had a pretty big operation, but she's round the corner. And finally, Jim Finch has just telephoned to say that Jennifer McGeorge is back, I'm afraid, in hospital, in Ward D4 at Addenbrooke's Hospital, the new Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge, with pneumonia. We feel very close to her, although she is many miles away, and several people have gone up to visit her, her friend. I think that's all we should say about visitors, you think? Now, there's been a request that we should play a little of the kirtan music, which plays such an important part in the Shankaracharya's setup and tradition, especially in relation to meditation. He says that the music by the small orchestra that he has trained can lift us off the ground from our inertia, that it shifts the molecules. I want to play a little now and then go into meditation. And in order, partly, that we should see whether the recording that the Hyatts have just made, and which has gone back to New Zealand with Rosh Mishra, who accompanied them, is better, and then we'll buy it off them at a great price. This is an old record, but then we'll meditate just after. You see, it isn't a question of whether we like a certain kind of music or not. Is it possible to find any music which everybody in a room this size would like? But certain music has the power to bring one into a new state of consciousness, or at least rouse one. And other music has not. We'd particularly like, Mr. Hyatt, a good recording of the hymn to Krishna. Did you have that? No, you haven't. We'll try some more of this music at the meditation meeting. But in one group in South Africa with whom travelers are connected, they put the kirtan music on at the start when everybody is collecting to try and raise the atmosphere a little. We try experiments. Now we started this year, sessions, with the idea of trying very hard to wake up by every means in our power. We've had enough experience to now show us, each of us, that there are moments when we're awake. And in those moments, we realize we've been asleep ever since the last moment. And the Western system brought by Mr. Uspensky to us, and the Eastern, much more ancient system of the Shankaracharyas meet on this point. They agree about the four states of consciousness: sleep at night and relative sleep during the day, in which we pass all our lives, almost all our lives; a third state of consciousness in which one sees what lies before one. One sees oneself, one sees the people one knows and the events around as they are. Mr. Uspensky used to call it, one becomes objective for oneself. And then there's a state beyond that. Both East and West agree, which is known in the East as Turiya, the fourth state, translated usually as enlightenment, and in the West as cosmic consciousness sometimes. Now, the means to waking up into this third state, which is not under our control at all, is through obtaining control over attention. Attention is the means to waking up. And in any sort of system which has to do with realizing man's possibilities, it's always some aspect of attention which is used in the dervish turning, and meditation, and movements to music, and in yoga, and so on. But we're very far from understanding what attention means, what it should be, and we've got to get rid of a whole lot of old false ideas about it. It must be connected with self-remembering, with remembering that we have a divine self inside us. And you could say that true attention means doing honor to this divine self. Now, we have to come at this gradually. We all have built-in ideas about it, and we don't get any marks for knowing things about attention. What we get the marks for is discovering a way to have attention. And this is what we want to aim for. So I found the impact of this idea on the two newest groups very stimulating indeed. And I would like Lord Allen to read a few of the questions and see if we can get off-the-cuff answers to them. But they will have, at their next meeting next Thursday, all the questions answered in brief, to some extent, as far as one's capable. So now we're starting with which one, Dr. Connell?
Dr. Connell, yes.
I hope that a lot of the new groups will be here tonight.
Bridget Hall, I'd like to venture on this idea. The smallest world is the physical, and it manifests from one person to another through the dominant hemisphere, which can't communicate the greater things so easily.
Now, I would like her to keep that. That's quite true. I'd like her to, not to embroider it, but to see if she can observe this and bring her observations to the group.
Dr. Beckett, during childhood, at home and at school, one is constantly taught, again and again, that one is one's behavior, a naughty boy, a good boy, according to what one has done.
Is Dr. Beckett here?
Yes.
Yes. Well, now, it's awfully difficult for me to picture you as a naughty boy. But I know what you mean, and it is true. One's attention is shown by one's behavior. Nothing is manifested, remember, except physically. One can have the highest of good intentions, but if one doesn't manifest it physically, it doesn't exist. So you keep that idea, and when you're trying to be a good boy, this is a very good thing to do.
Then Bridget Hall again, one wonders if we are the only creatures conscious of our own existence. For example, is a tree conscious of being a tree?
We mistake this as an entirely human possibility. We don't know that. I think we're pretty certain that a tree is not conscious in the sense we're talking about, conscious of its own existence. So it's human beings, unlike any subhuman species, who can be conscious of their existence.
And Tony Anholt says, there's also the idea that humanity as a whole has collective consciousness.
It's Anholt here. Now, Tony, you've got to realize that that's one of the biggest fallacies that exists, and it's very widespread. Humanity as a whole have the collective possibility of consciousness, which is very far from collective consciousness. In fact, you can see by the behavior of many branches of humanity that they are definitely not conscious. And there can be no conscious evil, for instance. It's impossible. So anything which is sub-level is not conscious. So we must get that out of our idea that there is any collective consciousness in humanity, and that there is collective evolution laid on for everybody. There are growing points in humanity which show themselves from time to time in different civilizations, and there are big changes in humanity, as when Cro-Magnon man, the men who did the cave paintings, took over and Neanderthal man died out. We may be in for something of that sort. But humanity is not going to be so easily destroyed as some people think. Humanity will go on, and the growing point is being prepared now, probably, as the older civilization peters out. Something like that is possible. Anything you want to say about that?
Mark Tew, would you equate the third state of consciousness with what the psychologists commonly term a peak experience?
Well, every psychologist has a different term, and I wouldn't trust it or that. But what I think is that if it's a genuine experience of the third state of consciousness, of which there are quite a number momentarily recorded, then it must be seen by us as something of the nature of a peak experience, to put it that way. Any questions on that? We've all had glimpses of the third state. Let's make no mistake about it, we wouldn't be here at all if we hadn't. And it will feel different to different people in different circumstances. Difficult to make any other collective name for it. There's a lot of imagination about descriptions of peak experiences. People imagine themselves levitating and flying through the air and passing through doors and all sorts of things. But if it's genuine, a state where one suddenly sees oneself as one really is and all one's surroundings, then this is what we mean. Because the world is not what we imagine it to be. It's not what it appears to be. And it's this illusion which is part of the state of relative sleep, and the escape from this illusion and seeing the real thing is waking up into the third state. Any questions? Would you agree, Sean? Artists have it, you know, at times, and some do, some don't.
Then what's that state of consciousness that we enjoy when we're not lost in sleep, but similar to a meeting like this or in a group?
What state of consciousness do we enjoy when we're not lost in sleep, but when we're in a meeting such as this?
Oh, I one would like it to be the real thing, wouldn't one? I think one of the ways to get into this third state is to be in a group of people all wanting the same thing. It's called by the Shankaracharya satsang, and there can be many grades. There can be a fully realized man and a large crowd, or there can be just a small intimate group in an ashram, or there can be well-meaning people like us who have a great deal of help. Or there can be these weekly meetings. Alone, it's next to impossible. The whole idea is that we aren't all deeply asleep all at once, and we can shake each other by the shoulders and get shaken ourselves. Any other questions?
There seems to be a state where you realise that you are asleep, and yet you're not in this other state of consciousness. There's a feeling of something missing.
There seems to be a state when you realize you're asleep, and yet you aren't in a state of consciousness. There seems to be something missing.
Yes, and this is a very valuable first step. If we can only have a few more of those experiences when you realize you are not conscious and you want it, this would get us on. We have to go through that. There's a special level of man above the ordinary level, men who realize their limitations and desperately want to overcome them, but haven't done it yet. It's said that if there were 100 such people for every awakened man, then that awakened man would go a step higher, and each of those 100 people would go a step higher, and so the man with higher state of consciousness would have 10,000 people who would feel his influence. What we make a mistake about is that we think that to wake up into a new state of consciousness is to be more active, more bright and shining, outspark the next person, outsmart him. It isn't that at all. The next state of consciousness comes by giving up the ego, giving up, giving up, giving up, and realizing that one is small, but one has wonderful big potentiality within us, within each of us. It's achieved in silence, and in the present moment, because the divine self only manifests itself in silence and always in the present moment. Question? Should we go on with the new group?
Tony Anher again. Dr. Rolls used the phrase, our instinctive sense of the divine. Can it be there without our ever being conscious of it?
Yes, that's the big idea, that we all of us are born with an instinctive sense of the divine. And right back in primitive peoples, in all phases of humanity, there has been this instinctive sense which has kept coming up. Whether you know it or not, the whole idea is to recognize it and capitalize on it. We recognize extraordinarily how in children they had this. You parents often overhear their very young children talking as if they're quite certain that something like that is going on. Don't you find that? Children before the age of 2, you have to see it in their eyes. It's those that have the precious idea that they come from a higher consciousness and gradually fall asleep during physical life and go back to this higher consciousness again at the end. Then as the speech centers, Bridget Hall develop, get going by the age of 3 and 4, the dominant hemisphere takes over and puts the lid on the whole thing. Have yours begun to show that, Sylvia?
That was very
That's all we can deal with from Dr. Connor's group, but aren't they good questions? But now here's some more from the guides.
This is Martin Redfern. Would not conscious moments produce their own energy?
Yes, surely. They do it at first by a release of energy. We've got a tremendous lot of stores of energy within us, of all kinds and degrees of energy, and they need release. And a conscious moment is when one releases, say that more powerful parts of our endowment get out from under the personality and other more dormant parts. And that is quite enough energy to begin with. Later we may need to manufacture some more energy, but that's enough to start with.
And then there were 2 very vivid experiences as a result of
I'd like to hear that.
When, this is Diana Mahoney, followed by Joe Skeeping, when potholing, which presented a frightening challenge, the fear was so intense that one simply had to come to terms with it, and suddenly it went. This left a most amazing feeling of freedom. This was all in the moment, and on return one had an emotional feeling about the value of light.
Yes, a very vivid picture that gives, and certainly coming to terms with some strong fear and winning the battle produces this feeling of light and liberation.
And Joe Skeeping had a similar, he said it was like this for me too. After a great fear of flying, I experienced the ground as never before.
Glad he experienced it the right way. So that's probably why people do all sorts of daring things. One goes skiing. It used to be said that if one showed half the daring in the field of psychology that one shows in breaking one's limbs skiing, one would get very far. It probably is this desire to wake up and desire for liberation from things like fear.
This is Martin Redfern again. When one wakes up, is one not above good and bad eventually?
You see, what is good, what is bad? We've no way of telling, no way of establishing. What's good for one person at one time is bad for other people at other times. It's all subjective. You can't speak of a general good and a general bad in our state. But what you begin to do is to see that for me, at this particular moment, this is better than that. Or that would be definitely bad. I must not do that. But you mustn't then go to your neighbor and say, you do so and so and don't do that. This is where we make so many enemies and make so many mistakes. Any questions about that? Only God, and even God doesn't lay down the law about what is good and what is bad. Even the absolute command of the universe. He makes the laws, and everyone is free to do what they like and take the consequences.
Ingrid Denning, is it that one only sees differences because one does not see the whole?
You need to know a bit more, both about Ingrid Denning and about what she's meaning when she says that.
I think it's in general relationship to sleep.
And is it that when... yes, of course she's right. I mean that all the differences of opinion, the disagreements, and so on, occur because people do not see the whole thing. They only see one little bit from their own point of view.
And I think I said it's because we are not whole that we see the differences.
I see. It's because we are not whole that we see the differences.
Yes. And yet, when we are whole, we have to see the differences between things that ordinarily are taken as alike. So there's a catch to this question. And I think whoever knows Ingrid Denning better will have to have a little talk with her about it. Yeah.
I think that was her who was asking the supplementary question then,
Oh, it was.
yeah, or explaining the question.
You see what I mean? It's rather sweeping generalization, Miss Denning.
And then Rosemary David, would it help to try and change habits? Are there any exercises or tasks that can be given?
It's all really about freeing ourselves from habits. It's habits that keep one asleep. But in this tradition of ours, we come about it in a rather gentle way, by trying to do attentive actions. Bad actions gradually fade out. So we don't turn around and make a fight with our habits. I've been trying to stop smoking for 30 years. One aims for a definite objective. One sees what behavior is compatible with that, and then everything which gets in the way gradually dissolves. This is the Shankaracharya's method, I think. Wouldn't you say? We had a bad upbringing. We used to smite each other's bad habits. I've got the scars on me still, and it didn't do any good.
Well, that's a lot.
Well, that's a sample of these very refreshing questions, and I hope they ask some more each Thursday, and we'll profit by that. They started up in questions that people have been wanting to ask.
This question of habit, Dr. Rose.
The question of habit, yes, yes.
I thought that trying to practice the meditation twice a day was a good habit,
I see. Mr. Hodge is, in a way, worried that trying to practice the meditation twice a day is a habit.
I didn't say anything more than that we should, if we're going to have habits, we should have good habits and not bad habits. Certain things, this habit formation is a very valuable part of the machine. It's a mechanism whereby when you learn something, it becomes automatic. Take driving a car. The learner driver has to have desperate attention the whole time. But the instructor, his attention, or the experienced driver, his attention is remarkably free. I mean that he only attends to the salient things. He mustn't lose his attention driving a car, but he only attends to the salient things. He takes in the whole scene. And it's a great relief, many people in this room will know, when they take the L off and pass their test. It's the same with learning any physical skill. A valuable mechanism, saves infinite time and energy, does all this stuff that the mind shouldn't be bothered with. We've got a lot to learn about it. More questions?
Can I ask a question about, going back to last term, about the drama, playing the two types of roles? I think you said we have to learn a conscious role, and also we have a mechanical role in life. It seems that at first, when we're given methods in a conscious role of some kind, there's conflict between the two roles, which can be useful in that the conflict itself can help wake us up.
Not sure that I got Mr. Wood's question, but he wants to refer back to last term's discussion about the drama, when it was said there were two types of roles to learn, the conscious role and the mechanical role. And he said that it seemed to him, when trying to be conscious, that there was a conflict between the two roles. And in fact, this could be useful if the conflict itself woke us up, was it?
It helps wake us up.
Yes, helps to wake us up.
I would agree with that, wouldn't you? I think that there is a conflict,
Yeah.
and we're all the time in a drama, and a lot of it we're called upon without our volition to play certain roles which are not of our choosing. On the other hand, our tradition represents a possibility of learning to play a conscious role in a consciously produced drama. And there is, as you know, a conflict. And this struggle of yes and no, as it used to be called, does wake one up.
Is it possible to eventually bring the two together so that there's harmony?
Is it possible eventually to bring the two together?
Yes, and for the householder, you see, this is very important. For somebody on the way of the monk who goes and lives a special life in a monastery, then there's only one thing, and they externally produce conflict. But the householder has to play a conscious role within his ordinary life roles, of which there are a number: family, business, quite a number. Each man in his life plays many parts, as Jacques said in As You Like It. But the great thing is to look at a conscious drama and one's role in that in a quite different way from all the others. Right? And have special relationship with one's fellow actors. And our roles change in relation to this. One life, one man is teacher, another life he's learner. We play different roles. Sometimes we play the villain, and sometimes the hero and heroine, and so on. In conscious roles, everything is very fluid. It's never repetitive. Mechanical roles tend to go on and on and on and get more and more boring all the time. Now, I would like to, the last 2 or 3 minutes, to give you a little evidence of the fact that this idea of attention is the meeting ground of both the Western system and the Eastern system. When I first had sessions with the Shankaracharya in private, it was agreed that I put to him various fundamental ideas of our Western system and see if he would agree and what he would say. And at one point I put the idea of attention, and I gave a brief synopsis of what we'd been taught by Mr. Uspensky and had tried to practice about attention in the West. there isn't time to read the synopsis I gave. You'll hear it later if you like. But I'd like you just to hear his reply.
Yes, and Shankaracharya said, attention is the source of success. Success depends upon attention. He gives efficiency as the other side of attention. We can combine both these words in one and see them. Then attention and efficiency are the same thing. Then he describes that only men high on the ladder have this. The realized man, having the greatest attention, he can do anything in the world, but will have complete attention. Even if he is in Turiya or in Samadhi, he will have complete attention at his disposal. The ordinary man has no attention, floating attention. One moment here, next moment there. Neither here nor there. Their attention is always diverted from one point to another, which gives them no result. Without attention, he says, nothing can be done. It's a very, very important factor in the life of any aspirant or disciple.
Well,
You want to go on to that?
I'd just like to say that when I first caught a sight of the Shankaracharya, I knew that he had complete attention, and in all the different spheres of action in which one has seen him, surrounded by crowds, in a small boat in the swirling Ganges, and in private, he has always had complete attention. That makes it very important to keep this thread of connection with him. I never met anybody else with it. If I'd met somebody closer at hand, I wouldn't have had to go to India. There's the last bit.
Did you want to do that?
Yes, he makes another point here in answer to a remark.
Dr. Earls said, attention directed by will is one thing, but cannot attention be aroused by emotion, yet caught and held by the object, so a man becomes a prisoner? The answer was, the two kinds of attention, the attention given and the attention caught, can be related to the difference between attention of the realized man and of the disciple. The disciple has to attend to the words of the realized man, but the realized man catches the attention of the disciple. However forceful the words of the realized man may be, if the disciple is not attending, they will have no effect. So the important thing is for the attention to be given. That is the prime factor in understanding anything. Anybody who wants to learn anything must attend. The other force may be there, but it is powerless if the student or the disciple does not give attention.
Well, this is very similar to what we learned by example largely from Mr. Ustrensky and also by precept. And in order not to complicate things any further, I think that now, it being just 1:30, we ought to sit up and go and have supper.
May I give you one?
I hope you were hearing all right.
I know you want to keep it.